Hey, after you've gotten yourself ready in the morning, go ahead and grab yourself this copy of the Garden City Gazette. Today's issue is June 30th, 1894. A big blaze. The residence of E.B. Goodman, a mile below the Union Pacific Depot, burned Wednesday night about 10:30 o'clock. The building was not occupied at the time of the blaze, the family being in La Grande, Oregon. Some of the neighbors carried a lot of the furniture out of the house, but sparks from the burning building set it on fire and it was nearly all consumed. Nearly drowned. George Root, while out fishing Tuesday, came near taking up his fishing exercises on the other shore. He had cast his line in the Walla Walla River when he became dizzy and fell into the water. A friend who was near rescued him from danger. He was unconscious when taken from the stream. A private dinner party. Lieutenant and Mrs. Kress entertained Mr. and Mrs. Levi Ankeny and Mr. J.Y.G. Walker at a private dinner party at the Garrison Wednesday evening. The house was lavishly decorated with flowers and the menu was excellent. After the repast, Lieutenant and Mrs. Kress and their guest attended the reception at the residence of Colonel Compton in honor of General E.S. Otis. There will be a grand celebration Walla Walla this July 4th that will eclipse anything ever given in Walla Walla. Barrels of water will be placed at convenient points for the accommodation of the thirsty. On one Independence Day several years ago, a novel procession marched up Main Street just as the shades of night had become rather dense. All the participants were clad in long flowing night robes. They flitted along like spirits of another world. A bloody fight. Two men by the names of F. Dent and Jack Moran got into a little difficulty at the Eureka Saloon Saturday afternoon. An argument arose as to which was the better man, and as the question could not be definitely settled, they resorted to blows. After battering each other's faces for a time, they clinched and rolled around on the floor in a loving embrace. Several friends and the bartender attempted to separate them, but without avail. After fighting for several minutes in this unsatisfactory manner, the two suddenly concluded that the police might gather them in, so they broke away without time being called. The police appeared and captured the men. Upon taking an inventory of themselves, it was found that Dent was minus a portion of his left ear, while Moran was also in a generally dilapidated condition. The men presented a ghastly sight, their faces being covered with blood at the end of the fray. Good advice. Now ere you sit upon park seats to watch the passing crowds go by, you'll find it well to ascertain if the paint therein is good and dry. A story has just leaked out in town over which the principals would fain cast the mantle of obscurity, which is to this effect. Two ladies, well known in Walla Walla, were out driving one evening when suddenly the trace snapped in twain and the ladies were in a dilemma. Not a soul was to be seen and not a house near. A piece of cord was not available, although the search was made for it high and low. A cord, my kingdom for a cord. Suddenly, her face lighting up with a flash of intuition which characterizes her sex, one of the party exclaimed, "I have it!" and suiting her action to the word, unhinged herself, and lifting the folds of her drapery in the twinkle of an eye, a little buckle unsnapped somewhere, and a substitute for the cord was procured. Being strong enough and long enough, The ladies were soon on their way rejoicing. The next day the harness was repaired. Tour on wheels. We left Walla Walla Wednesday morning and wheeled along the Dixie Road with a stiff breeze on our backs that made pedaling comparatively easy. About 8 miles out, the roads became so dusty that we had to walk most of the way to Dixie. We walked up the 1.5-mile hill out of Dixie, but were well paid for our troubles by the fine coasting we got on the other side. We arrived in Waitsburg in time for a cold dinner and made a stop there for an hour. Our next stop was at Shiloh, where camp meeting is being held, and a nice-looking place it is, with the cool pine trees and the tents stretched over the grounds. It is an ideal camping place, and we were loath to leave it for the hot, dusty road. We arrived in Dayton. Dayton has the bicycle craze. There is many wheels in that place as there is in Walla Walla. We were 2 hours going to Cavello. We had hard roads till we got to Marengo after a fine coast of 2.5 miles down the hill by that name. We had to stop several times to let our tires cool off as they got very hot. We reached Snake River without any mishap and crossed on the Alpawa Ferry 8 miles from Lewiston. It took us 2 hours to traverse that distance. A train ditched. Sunday afternoon, a Union Pacific train was ditched near Wilbur, Oregon. 2 engines were hauling the regular freight train. As they approached a small bridge, some horses ran onto the structure ahead of them. The animals fell between the ties and the train ran against them. The engine and several cars were ditched as a consequence. 2 men were injured. Charles Norris, a fireman, had his legs crushed. The names or nature of the injuries of the other man was not learned. Traffic was delayed 3 or 4 days owing to the freight and passengers having to be transferred at the scene of the accident. $5 reward. Strayed or stolen from my place in the northeastern part of the city, 1 gray horse, about 8 years old, branded Anchor D, connected on left shoulder. A reward of $5 will be paid for the return of said animal or information by which I can recover possession of the same. George Dacres, Walla Walla. Patronize the Walla Walla Streetcar Company. Home enterprise. It adds 20% to the value of your property. Operated by Yan, Yarnell & Co. Walla Walla will soon have a swimming pool in operation in which individuals can take a ducking or a swim at 25 cents per head. In Walla Walla, contrary to general impression, the people are not shy of the water. What Multitude did. A number of years ago, during an Independence Day celebration, Old Multitude, a freighter, came driving his wagon into town. There were 6 horses hitched to it. To flip the flies off the leader's ears required a whip of about 16 feet long. On the end of it was a firecracker about the size of a man's hand. When Multitude cracked his whip, the explosion could be heard long before the driver appeared in sight. On the day in question, Multitude drove down Main Street, twirling the weapon, and each twist of the wrist brought out a report that would put a cannon to shame. It is said that the reverberations of the whip commenced breaking store windows, and Multitude was arrested and heavily fined for disturbing the peace. Thank you for subscribing.